What's up, everyone? Welcome to another one of my games. E4, knight to c6. The names of which defense is on the board, and that's not an opening I come across all the time. And that can happen to you. That can happen to anyone. In fact, most of us chess players are not used to playing openings that we know all the time. You don't know 20 moves by heart as top grandmasters do. So, what do we do in such a situation? We obey chess principles and try to do our best. So here's what we want to do. When our opponent allows us to take the whole center, we go ahead and take it. Taking the center makes your position really imposing and your opponent finds it very hard to develop, which is what you want. The other thing that you want to do once you develop your pawns in the center is develop your pieces around it. The bishops can go in this diagonal and the knights can come anywhere in any of these squares. So that should be your first target, and castling. If you want to castle and decide which side to castle, do that as well. So here I go ahead and take the entire center. And my opponent says, well, I don't want you to have the entire center. So knight to f6, attacking the e-pawn. Now, it's always good to remember and remind yourself that the e-pawn is not defended by default, while the d-pawn is always defended by the queen, even when pushed forward. So we defend the pawn. Knight to c3. d5 was played and e5. Not letting an exchange happen, still continuing to control the center as much as possible and kicking the opponent knight, making it move. And a trade happens here in the center, which I consider beneficial for myself, and I'll tell you why. This pawn can easily be attacked by my pieces over the course of time. Although it does impede my knight's natural development, the knight can be developed to the e file, and then from there it can come to g3, attacking the pawn. The queen can also attack the pawn at any point of time. And once the king is castled, the rook, when it comes here, it can also attack the pawn. So the pawn can't stay there for very long. And at the same time, the only defensive options my opponent has are bishop down here and pawn down here. Now pawn down to f5 can be easily met with en passant, which is a legal move, and bishop down here would come into attack once the knight moves here. Both the pawn and the bishop would be attacked. So at this point, we are happy with our position, and I play the move c3, defending the center because it was attacked twice, both by the knight and the queen. You need to always remember to keep your center stable. And f6, attacking the center. Trade took place, and the bishop was developed to c4. Now this is a very good square for the bishop to be. Anytime you can put your bishops in any of the major squares which are imposing, that's good for you. And this is one of the most natural squares because it prevents your opponent from castling, which is what you want. That way the king will be open in the center and you can attack it. a6, preparing b5. So we stop b5 using a4, and also in case the knight wants to come and attack our bishop, we have somewhere to tuck our bishop back. Bishop to d6, knight to e2, bishop to g4, h3, kicking the bishop to h5, further harassing the bishop with g3, g4, and the bishop goes back to g6. Notice if it went back further, we would have happily traded, as our opponent would lose all castling rights, and we would even prepare queen to b3 at any point of time, which would come with the tempo. The knight was developed to the square where we wanted it to go. The plan was to put it on g3, and now a trade takes place. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and the queen attacks the pawn. And we develop our piece with tempo, getting an attack on the queen. Now the queen has to move, and the queen moves to d7. a5. The idea behind a5 being Once your pawns are pushed pretty high up, it is very difficult to castle in that particular direction. It is very imposing, and no one wants to castle into an area where their opponent pawns coming around to storm the defenses. Queen to e7, b4. At this point, my opponent plays a very interesting move. Knight takes on b4, which is a very strong move because taking this knight would be a bad idea. At this point, the queen would take the pawn, and no matter how I defend check, our bishop would fall, and this would be really bad for white. So what we go ahead and do is play rook to b1, attacking the knight back, counter attack, asking the knight where do you want to put the knight. If the knight goes back, we can pick up this pawn and go on our own attack, where this pawn is also now being threatened by both the bishop and the rook. So knight to d3 was played from this position, and we really want to trade. We don't want the knight to be so close into our position, really impedes your movement. And the bishop is also threatened. Bishop takes, pawn takes. This comes with a discovered check, and we just move away. Now, one might think that this is not very good for white as we lost castling rights, but not really. Now the rook can go into the open file and harass the black king and black queen, which is what we want. And black castles to the queen side, as staying in the center was really looking imposing. Rook to e1, attacking the queen. Queen to a3, queen to b3. Now queen to a3 here attacks both these pawns, and queen to b3 effectively defends them both, as you can't go ahead pawn grabbing anymore because that would simply lead to a check, losing a pawn, and the king would again have to come into the center, which is wide open for attacks. And we don't want that. No one wants that, so black doesn't want that. So a trade takes place. And the idea continues to be the same. If we can double up rooks on the b file and attack that pawn, it would be very, very effective, as black does not have good defenses for that particular pawn. Pushing it forward doesn't help. We can still go en passant, and the bishop can't effectively defend it either, as it can be captured over there. So what options does our opponent have? Our opponent plays the move pawn to d2, pushing it forward, guarding the b1 square using the bishop. We pick up the pawn happily. In a position like this, you really don't want to trade your pieces because your pawn structure, you have 1, 2, and 3 pawn islands over here, while your opponent has just 2 pawn islands, this being one and this being the other. And having 2 pawn islands is better than having 1 pawn island. Having 2 pawn islands is better than having 3 pawn islands. So you want to keep your pieces so that you can go for the attack. So bishop to e3, blocking off any exchanges from happening. Bishop to f7, attacking the rook. Rook to b4, bishop to e4, also planning to double up. Rook to b1. Now this move was made possible by the bishop move. When the bishop moved to f7, this made this rook move possible. Now the bishop comes and defends the b7 pawn, but not really. The bishop can be kicked out from here. c4, bishop to c6, d5, kicking the bishop out, bishop to e8. Now, how I want you guys to think about this is that we don't immediately have to go and capture the pawn, because if we do that, our opponent can capture our c pawn, and even if you go on the attack, the c pawn is defended by the rook, and our attack essentially comes to a halt. So it is very important sometimes to prepare a in-between move. So what in-between move can we play? King to f3. This removes the rook from the 4th rank, and the attack on the pawn will disappear. The rook moves back. Now we are free to pick up the pawn happily. The bishop comes and counterattacks the rook. Bishop counterattacks the rook, which really doesn't do anything to our position, and we can just move our rook to a dark square where it will be safe, continuing to be on the attack. My opponent plays a very unexpected move, and that is rook to d7. Now, what this does is blunders the entire game in one move, rook to b8. And that's what happened. Well, this game came to an end all of a sudden, but that's what it is. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more games and more videos on chess that will help you improve and help us improve together. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.